I hope you're excited, because set 9 is finally here and it's called Runeterra Reforged. Here we will be visiting all the different regions that Runeterra has to offer. In this video I will cover the 11 different origins that will make up the core part of the set.
Time to make an impact.
Let's kick things off with one of the most well-known regions, Demacia. If you have the trait active, then during the planning phase, your strongest Demacian unit becomes an elite and equips a random radiant item for the next combat. Elites grant armor and magic resist to themselves and adjacent allies, but this effect does not stack. Depending on how deep you go into this trait, you will receive more elites and a higher defensive bonus. There are a total of 7 units, with Kale and Poppy in tier 1, Galio in tier 2, Garen and Sona in tier 3 and Lux with Jarvan in tier 4. This means you require 2 emblems and level 9 to reach the highest level of this trait. The emblem is crafted by combining a spatula with a Negatron cloak. This trait has a lot of things going on, so let's take a closer look at how exactly the elite mechanic works. If you activate the trait, the game will make your strongest Demacian unit into an elite, which is visually indicated by a crown icon above the unit. The word strongest is somewhat misleading, because the true deciding factors are items, then star level, and then tier level. So for example, if you give a Kale 1 star, a single component, the game will prioritize the radiant item on her instead of a higher tier 3 star unit that doesn't have any items. The radiant items are also tailored towards the type of the unit. This means a frontline unit like Galio can only receive tank items, and a backline unit like Kale will receive AP or attack speed items. These radiant items are also determined for each unit in your planning phase. This means resetting the trait or the elites will still result in the exact same items until the next fight. There's also a special case if your strongest unit has 3 items or Thieves' Gloves. In this scenario, the game will avoid making the fully equipped unit into an elite and skip to the second strongest unit instead.
They will regret opposing me.
This will cover Demacia, but what about their counterpart Noxus? The trait reads that Noxus units gain health, ability power and attack damage. This is increased by 10% for each different opponent that you have either conquered in combat or is dead, and is capping out at a 70% increase. Same as Demacia, you have a total of 7 units, with Samira and Cassiopeia in tier 1, Kled and Swain in tier 2, Darius and Katarina in tier 3 and Zaun in tier 5. There is definitely a mirror to Demacia going on here, because you also require 2 emblems and level 9 to reach the highest level of this trait. The Noxus emblem can also be crafted by combining a spatula with a giant's belt. Overall, this trait is fairly easy to understand. It's quite similar to the Warlord trait from set 4, but with a small difference. With Warlord, you simply needed to win a fight to gain a stack. Noxus, on the other hand, is based around the individual players in your lobby. Winning against the same opponent twice won't do anything. To reach the maximum value, you have to win one fight against every single opponent. This condition is why this trait can also become stronger if players drop out of the game, since it is possible for a player to die before you ever manage to win a single round against that player.
Trust nothing but your strength.
If we go a little bit more north, then we reach the Freljord, and this is a trait that will see a lot of play. This trait has only 3 units, with Ashe in tier 2, Lysandra in tier 3 and Sejuani in tier 4. The Freljord emblem is not craftable, but if you find it with the help of augments, you can activate a very powerful effect. If you have the trait active, then after 5 seconds from combat start, an ice storm strikes the battlefield, which means the entire board. Enemies take a percentage of their maximum health as true damage and gain debuffs for 15 seconds. With only 2 units, you are dealing a low amount of damage, but you reduce both armor and magic resistance to all enemies, which makes this an incredibly valuable filler trait. If you go deeper into the trait, you can also apply a 50% mana reef, and with the emblem, you are not only dealing a large amount of damage, you will also stun your opponents for 1.5 seconds. All of these debuffs will stack on top of each other, so you don't have to worry about losing your armor shred when adding an additional Freljord unit.
Let me guide you.
Another trait that is very similar in concept to Freljord is Targon. It also has 3 units with Soraka in tier 2, Taric in tier 3 and Aphelios in tier 4. The effect you receive is as simple as it gets. Your healing and shielding is increased. Going deeper into the trait simply increases the amount. Set 9 has a lot of units with shields in their kit, and Taric will likely be a popular frontline in a lot of comms since he has 3 traits with Targon, Bastion and Sorcerer. You can get a lot of value out of this trait since it synergizes with a lot of abilities and augments. However, the emblem itself is not craftable, and considering it's just a stat increase, at the moment I don't think we will be seeing a lot of players pick up the emblem or go deeper into this trait.
You wouldn't last a day in the void.
The next region is likely going to be an absolute fan favorite trait in set 9, and it's the Void. You will find a lot of familiar faces and abilities here. With this trait, you get a placeable Void egg. At the start of combat, it hatches into an unspeakable horror and knocks up adjacent enemies. Each Void star level increases the horror's health and ability power by 25%. Starting at 3 Void units, you receive a Void Remora. The next level is at 6 and the egg will hatch into a Rift Herald, and if you manage to get all the way up to 8, then you can smash your opponents with Baron Nashor. The cool part about this trait is that it's surprisingly accessible. It has 7 units with Cho'Gath and Malzahar in tier 1, Kassadin in tier 2, Rek'Sai and Vel'Koz in tier 3, Kai'Sa in tier 4 and Bel'Veth in tier 5. Chasing after Baron is something a lot of players will attempt, but it might be harder than it looks. The Void emblem is not craftable, and even if you find it, you're still required to find a legendary unit before you can reach your final power spike. It will definitely remind a lot of players of the Innovator trait since you have 3 different summons, and it can also be somewhat of a reroll comp since the star levels of your units make your summons stronger. Speaking of summons, what exactly is their ability? The first summon is a Void Fish. His ability gives him a large shield for 2 seconds that deals damage to nearby enemies once it expires. Nothing too crazy here, just a nice additional frontline unit. The second summon is a bit more exciting with the Rift Herald. He will charge towards the furthest enemy and get stopped by the first enemy that gets hit by his charge. This will deal a massive amount of magic damage and also stun nearby enemies. And finally, the last summon is Baron Nashor. He works a bit differently. He will always cast after 2 auto attacks and rotate between 3 different spells. In his first cast, he throws 3 pools of acid towards the largest group of enemies and reduces their armor and magic resistance by 70% for 4 seconds. His second cast is a massive single target burst that can one-shot pretty much any unit in the game. He also heals for 20% of his max health. His third spell is an AoE knockup, and afterwards his rotation starts from the beginning again with the acid pools. All in all, a super cool trait and definitely something you should try out yourself.
A demonstration of superior judgment.
Our next region is Ionia, which has a very similar setup to Demacia and Noxus. This time you have 8 units, with Jhin and Aurelia in tier 1, Zed and Zed in tier 2, Karma in tier 3, Shen and Yasuo in tier 4, and Ahri in tier 5. The highest level of this trait is at 9 as well, and requires at least 1 emblem, which can be crafted with a spatula and a BF sword. The trait itself is a bit confusing at first glance, but it makes sense once you get the hang of it. Every 4 seconds, your strongest Ionians are enlightened to their spirit form and gain 20 mana. Each Ionian has a unique bonus within their ability, which doubles when in spirit form. Going deeper into the trait will enhance the bonus of each unit further and also increase the amount of units that can enlighten to their spirit form. First up, let's talk about the unique bonuses. If you right click on the ability of any Ionian unit, then you can see at the bottom of the description they have a bonus listed. For example, Set receives bonus HP, Aurelia gets an armor and MR buff, Karma has increased AP, and a unit like Shen takes reduced damage. Once you have the Ionian trait active, every Ionian unit will receive the bonus that is listed in the description. Every 4 seconds, one of your Ionian unit becomes enlightened, which will increase the Ionian bonus. As a short example, if you activate the trait and you are running Karma, then she will have plus 20 AP for the entire fight. When she gets enlightened, this buff will double, so now she has plus 40 AP for a short amount of time. If you put 6 6 Ionia on your board, then she will now receive plus 40 AP as a base, which gets doubled to 80 AP when she's enlightened. If you put an Ionia emblem on a unit, then the unit will always receive plus 40 attack speed as their own unique bonus, which can get buffed the same way as Karma in the previous example.
The weak are condemned.
Next up we have Zaun, and this region has a very powerful item mechanic and a pretty weird unit distribution. Here you have Jinx and Warwick in tier 2, Echo in tier 3 and Urgot with Zeri in tier 4. Zaun champions create random chem mods that only they can use. Champions can be modded once and mods can only be removed by selling the champion. You can get between 1 and 3 chem mods depending on how deep you went into the trade, and the final version also has an additional overcharge mechanic. Let's start with the chem mods. Once you activate the trait, you receive a consumable item with a very powerful effect. For example, you can receive the Unstable Chem Tank, which grants your Zaun unit more HP and deals magic damage if the unit dies in combat. Or you can also receive an Adaptive Implant. This grants you attack damage and ability power while the unit is healthy, and Omni Vamp when the unit is below 50% HP. If you place the chem mod on a unit, then you can see the modification above the stats. Like the trait mentioned, once consumed, you have to sell the unit if you want to place the mod on someone else. The order of chem mods is not the same for every player, so just because your first chem mod was the chem tank doesn't mean that this applies to the other players in your lobby. Once you have 6 Zaun on your board, you receive the overcharge mechanic, which is pretty much a secondary effect for each chem mod. For example, the Unstable Chem Tank will deal more damage in a larger radius, or the Adaptive Implant will double the bonus and grant both effects from the start.
Punch first. Ask questions while punching.
Piltover, on the other hand, is our economy gamble trait in set 9, similar to previous traits like Underground. Here you will find 5 units with Orianna in tier 1, Vi in tier 2, Jace and Echo in tier 3 and Heimerdinger in tier 5. Activating the trait grants you the T-Hex. Every time you lose a player combat, the T-Hex gains charges. Winning a fight converts the charges to power for the T-Hex. You can also sell the T-Hex if it has any power, resetting it and converting the power into loot. Piltover also has a very difficult chase trait that requires both an elusive emblem and a legendary unit. Playing 6 Piltover will grant you more charges when you lose and also gives you bonus loot orbs when you win fights. The orbs from 6 Piltover can range from item components to double chalice or even a tactician's crown, but the exact rewards is something I want to cover in a future video. The way the T-Hex works is that converting charges into power by winning a fight will grant her more HP and can also unlock new abilities or star levels at specific thresholds. If you hover over the T-Hex, you can see the current loot value that you have accumulated. Selling her won't give you exactly this amount of gold. Instead, you will receive items that have around the same value.
Head high, chin up, scissors ready.
But enough of the main continent. Let's check out the Shadow Isles. The origin here has 5 units with Maokai and Viego in tier 1, Callista in tier 3, Gwen in tier 4 and Senna in tier 5. The emblem is not craftable, which is a shame because I can definitely see a lot of potential trickery in the future. The trait reads that after dealing or receiving damage 8 times, Shadow Isle units gain a shield for 8 seconds and become spectral for the rest of combat. Spectral units gain mana every second. Going deeper into this trait will simply grant a larger shield and more mana per second once they become spectral. What exactly will end up counting as an instance of damage is also something that will require a lot more testing. The same way Urgot in set 8 isn't able to proc a Titan's Resolve with his rapid shots, the same way you aren't able to trick the system into proccing the spectral form right at the beginning of a fight. But this is something I will cover in the future.
Shurima, your emperor has returned.
Our final vertical origin in set 9 is Shurima. You might recognize a pattern here, because yet again we have 7 units, a craftable emblem and a chase trait at 9. You can find Renekton and Cassiopeia in tier 1, Talia in tier 2, Akshan in tier 3, Azir and Nasus in tier 4 and Cassante in tier 5. The different levels of Shurima change how the trait works, so let's go through everything one by one. If you activate the trait, then every 4 seconds Shurimans heal for 7% max health. After 8 seconds, your strongest Shuriman ascends and gains 40% max health and 40% attack speed. The next level at 5 allows every Shuriman unit to receive this bonus after 8 seconds. Once you reach the 3rd tier, your Shuriman units will ascend at the start of combat and after 8 seconds for a second time, which is definitely quite powerful. The final level at 9 will buff the bonus health and attack speed even further by 50%. You can definitely feel the difference in power when you reach a higher level of this trait, and I can definitely see how this trait will become quite popular as a vertical trait.
I'm no hero, just a Yordle with a hammer.
Last but definitely not least are the Yordles. Technically they aren't a region, but I guess Yordles do sound a lot cooler than something like Bendel City. You have Tristana and Poppy in tier 1, Kled and Teemo in tier 2, and Heimerdinger in tier 5. Activating the trait will grant your allies 10% attack speed per star level. Yordles can also become 4-star, which will change how their spell works. If you have 3 3-star champions, then your strongest 3-star Yordle becomes 4-star, and if you manage to find a Heimerdinger and place 5 Yordles on your board, then you can also gain a second 4-star Yordle. This will obviously be a very popular reroll trait, but there are a few important details for you to remember. First up, the attack speed bonus is individual for every unit. So a random 2-star unit will gain plus 20% attack speed, and if you upgrade this unit to 3-star, then it will now gain 30% attack speed. You are also not required to upgrade all of your Yordles to 3-star. In theory, you can 3-star 2 units together with 1 Yordle of your choice, and as long as the Yordle trait is active, then your Yordle will transform into the 4-star version. The ability upgrades at 4-star are quite noticeable. You can see them by hovering over their ability. For example, Poppy will throw her target into the enemy cluster, dealing maximum health damage, while someone like Teemo gets a larger explosion radius. And probably one of the #1 goal for every content creator is to reach a 4-star Heimerdinger. You can expect Set 9 to become available on the PBE this week, and I will upload daily videos based on different interactions, secrets and metacoms to prepare you for the upcoming ranked season. If you don't want to miss anything, why not subscribe and support this channel? I hope you learned something, and see you next time.